Hi, my name is Mike MacCormack. My mother calls me Michael, most people call me Mac. I'm the General Manager at Stourhead for the National Trust. I've been working for the National Trust 25 years ago last week as it happens. And in all that time, one of the favourite parts of my work has been with volunteers and volunteering. So I'm hoping to be able to share some of those thoughts. I've been invited to the Connecting Disciples conference in order just to talk about volunteering, and the reason for that is that of the experience that I have with the National Trust, and it seems really important that some of the generic and overall lessons that we've learned in the Trust over the years can be shared with other organisations. And of course, for me, coming to talk to a largely church-based audience and their needs for volunteering is actually something that suits me as well, because I happen to be a non-stipendiary priest in the Anglican Diocese of Bath and Wells, and of course have first-hand experience with volunteering there. It's interesting though, because every organisation, and the Trust in particular, has its own specialities and its own sort of thoughts and ways that one should do things. But churches, charities, absolutely base themselves. The whole point of work that we do when there is a cause, when there is a mission, is to do with sort of starting from a base, and that base should be people, and it's no better to be volunteers. So for example, at Stourhead, we have a full-time equivalent establishment of staff of 40. That breaks down into about 55 paid members of staff and maybe a dozen seasonal staff complementing that. But on the other hand, we have over 450 volunteers. So the core, the foundation of the work at Stourhead is very much to do with volunteering and having that volunteer base right. And our sort of beauty of where we need to be in the Trust, the beauty of our calls and relating that to volunteers, is that we want volunteers to be involved in every aspect of the work that we do. And my understanding of the way that churches work, of course, again, is that it's totally reliant on its congregation, its disciples, its volunteers, and it's the work that they do in a collaborative sense with those few who will be paid to be leading and organising work, that we can get much more done. And the Trust also says about its volunteering that it is a way of deepening and increasing its support base. And I think the same is true for the church. If someone comes forward to volunteer for the church, then even if maybe at the beginning their connections or the thoughts of what the church might do might be slightly secondary perhaps to the skill they want to bring, or they're already part of that church and then they have got skills and gifts that can be teased out. And either way, I'm just thinking that there's something about discipleship in that there is that sense of connecting and deepening the relationships with people. So, where I'm going to take this is that I want to look at some of the research and basic statistics that's out there at the moment about how volunteering looks in the 21st century and how we can work with that into the future. And the National Trust, maybe the church too, has tended to look back, I think, with volunteering and hasn't really necessarily moved with the times. We move with the times with the technology that we use, and yet in some ways we're still working with volunteers in a fairly, well, if I dare say so, old-fashioned way. So it's those experiences that I want to share. I want to talk about how volunteers have a mixed and flexible and sort of varied way now of trying to offer that. The key thing that we discovered with the initial part of the research was just asking a very simple question about whether people who aren't already volunteering would volunteer, and it turned out that 27 million people in the country said that they would, I don't quite know how they arrived at that figure, but that would volunteer for the National Trust if they had the right access in. So the research then is, well, who are these people, what are they doing, how do they need to make that access? And the first and foremost thing is that there's a huge pool of people in the early retirement in what we're lovingly known as the baby boomers, and there's an enormous amount of gifts and skills there. And the way that we built that up at Stourhead is not only to look at the conventional roles that we've had, because the research is telling us that these people want often to give the skills that they've had as their professional skills before. And that meant that we could think about volunteer managers. We could work on those pool of people to bring that experience. It's also true on the other hand, of course, that a lot of people come to do volunteering to get away from where they were, but it's also, you know, going to talk to people, getting out there, and we advertise for volunteers in newspapers, for example. Some of those got specific roles, specific role profiles. We asked them to come and interview for those posts, so they're seen at a professional level. And again, you know, the research was indicating that that's how many people want to come to volunteer. They want to hear that there is a specific role for them to play. When we look at the younger generations, and I think the generations called the beta generations, the X and Y generations, they're also up for volunteering, and they're very good and wanting to do things, but they want to be much more flexible. They want to be able to maybe work from home for us. They want to be able to come in for short periods of time, and they find that allows them and gives them the opportunity to do interesting work like research, or to know when there was a group that they may be working with, and then come in and do that and go away, with then maybe time the work around them. So I mean, the biggest element of the learning there is not to dictate to people that we have this job and it needs to be filled. It's about saying, what can you do, what gifts and skills have you got, and understanding that. And I guess, you know, that there's some of the research around the age structures, and also the research done around social media, and there are far more people using social media at later stages in life than I think the Trust was thinking. We forget that the generation that now we might rely on as early retired, you know, have always been, you know, the people who have been sort of the revolution of the age of music and all those kind of things. You know, the post-Beatles generation, and you don't think of these, I don't think of myself as being old anymore. I've got sympathy with them to come along that same route. So the younger volunteers offer themselves in a variety of ways. They tend often to like to come in groups and to tackle single projects, for example, that can have a start and a finish. So our outdoor work is very conducive to them, I suppose. So things like cleaning beaches, coming out to work, maybe building dens for children and being part of the team that would make that happen. Maybe coming in to do some sort of costumed work for us. So grouping together and coming together as a group is one way. The other way is that people are quite keen to add things to their CV at quite an early age, so and to get volunteering under their belt, but it needs the Trust or the church to give them responsibilities. I think it's really important, because if their CVs are going to work, so it's about finding out what they may want, where they might want to go, what they're exploring, and then give them that opportunity to develop that. We also look now at internships in the Trust quite frequently. We've always got one or two on the go at Stourhead. I don't know whether that's something that, you know, is transferable to the church, but again, it's something that's potentially worth looking at. And we find also that there are just literally, you know, youngsters whose passion for the things that we do, for gardening, for history, you know, are given rein, and they wouldn't get opportunity anywhere else. So they come to us just in order to, in a sense, indulge in what they do. And I think people who are having a growing, developing, or even maturing, fairly mature relationship with the church, I think they find the same. They want to do more. They want to explore their calling. They want to think whether, you know, they might be able to help run that group, and to maybe, you know, work with the children's groups or the teenage groups, or they may actually, you know, start to want to shadow the minister in a volunteering way and that kind of thing. So, I mean, we always seem to have 2 or 3 people, even at a fairly aged church and benefice where I work, who are exploring things, and it's good to allow them to make use of things. And I think one of the things we've also learned is that, you know, volunteers, you know, aren't, they shouldn't be treated as gophers, and sort of, I'm trying to avoid the word slave here, but, you know, that kind of sense in which, oh, they'll come in, they'll just do all the odd jobs. You've really got to tap into where they are and what we want to do. That's the most important thing. I think it's worth actually knowing what it is that prevents people from volunteering, and there's plenty of sort of comments and thoughts out there which help you understand that. Then when you understand why they're not volunteering, then actually you can start to tailor your work, and I think that's what we've found in the organisation. So it's working around people's lifestyles, working around their work patterns if they come out from work, and I just think that's probably the answer to a question, you know, why and what's the biggest thing that the National Trust, you know, as finding can pass on. I think it's really being invitational and then selective about and inclusive and collaborative about the way that people engage. It has to be something in it for them. It's a mutual relationship, and that's the key for all our work now, that we understand that we have something to offer those people and they certainly have their time, gifts and skills to offer us. It's understanding that relationship.